Okay, so in this video, before we get on to the next series, I just want to quickly go over some things I've been doing to fix some bugs that I've found in the character movement system before we move on from it, just because I don't want to leave you with a broken system. So the first thing I found is that if we climb up onto a ledge and then fall off, something happens with the hard landing variable where it sticks us into a state where we can't exit. We can't re-enable the IK, and therefore we can't move. So a way I found of fixing that is if we go to our is falling in our animation graph, and if we just add these nodes, we check if we're not falling, and if true, we're going to create an event called check hard landing, and then whenever it goes to true, we reset it. This way, this event only ever fires just as we land, or 2.2 seconds after. And it's 0.2 seconds after, because when we fire this event, we need to check with this new variable, hard landing playing, that the hard landing animation isn't playing, because the error that's happening is that it needs to hard land, but the animation doesn't start, despite having the right parameters to. So if you just make this hard landing playing variable and then wire all this up, we can then move on to how we've created this animation notifier. It's not created in the same way that you would usually create an animation notifier. It's actually created in our anim graph. So if we go to main states and then go to our hard landing, you can see that on here, animation state, custom blueprint event, and I've typed in hard landing animation playing. And so whatever we type in here, we'll create a notify event for when we enter this state. And here's one just from a botched example I filmed earlier. But yeah, so basically now whenever we enter this state, this event will play. And so when this fires, we want to set this to true just for a second and then switch it back off. So that when we land, if the hard animation is playing, it won't let this go through. But if it isn't, well, then we can instantly turn hard landing off, because it should be off at this point. Right, and then after that, we're going to do something to fix our turning, because with our smooth turning, whenever we change direction, the speed of that smooth turn was a little bit slow. So if we open our character, we want to make this event called change direction. And from that, we make a timeline called our turn multiplier. And what we do is for 1 second, we set the value to 2. And then at 1.5, although the first time I did it, I actually put it at 1.25, we set it back to 1. And then we create a variable called our turn multiplier. And to get this to fire every time we change direction, in here, each time one of these fires is when we change direction. So we just plug all these into our new change direction function. And then from there, if we go to where we set our loop, I've increased the B to 4.5, and then I've also times it by our turn multiplier. So that now whenever we change direction, it will double this lerp for a second and then ease back into the usual turning. Right, and then with that, I'll cut back to us fixing our climbing animation, because when we were climbing, we weren't turning towards the rotation of the wall we were climbing, and it caused a lot of issues. So now we'll move on to that. Then to get on to the third bug, I realised that we missed a few things out of our climbing system. And the first one is this is falling. Because really we only want to climb if we're in the air. So that's the first bug. And then the next thing we want to do is, well, we want to increase this to 70. So I found this is a little bit too low. But then now, we're able to attach the player to the point, but we also want to rotate the player towards the wall, because if we're jumping at the wall on an angle, the climb won't work as we want it to. Do this with, in our first trace that actually hits the wall, we get this out hit normal. And we can use this variable to get a rotation that will actually give us the rotation of the wall. Oh well, it'll give us inverse, so we have to revert it. Wall normal. As I said, I was testing this earlier, so normal. And then from here we can start to rotate our character. Now, this bit is a bit long-winded than it should be. I'm not sure why, but it seems that usually we just do it to turn the actor, but that doesn't quite work. So we have to do a few rotations. So I'm going to set the actor rotation. Get our wall normal. We want to multiply float by -1, and then we want to get this make rot from X, which should get us the rotation of the wall. But as I was earlier, this doesn't quite work. As you can see, it rotated us the wrong way. And as you can see, I've made this purple arrow, which viewport is just the same as these arrows. You just want to duplicate it. I moved it up to the waist just because it gave me a better visual. But as you saw when we were playing that animation, the arrow actually turned towards the wall. Which means, so from there, when we make this rotation, we now need to rotate the mesh. To do that, we're going to get the new rotation of this rotation arrow. So, yeah, so we get our world rotation. We then want to break it, or a break into axis. Just break the rotator. I'm going to reconstruct it But as we did when we were turning, we're going to take 90 just to get our mesh facing the right way, because in the template it seems like our character isn't facing the actual X. And from there we just set the wheel of rotation of this, and then this will rotate our character to the right direction to the wall when they're climbing. But we're also twisting the character while it's still locked to the direction, so that when we climb, the direction's always facing behind us, so that whenever we move, it causes a little error, which is what makes this so long-winded, is that we have to now set the wheel rotation of the direction arrow as well. To this far, you don't need to mind 90 to it. Now, always be rotated to the same location. And then another thing that we did of content, when we set this climb montage, the blend out time was way too low. And even testing a few times now, I lowered it to 0.8. I still think that's a little bit too low, because we kind of have to wait for him to stand up, which makes sense, but he then stands up and pauses, and we don't want that. So it just stops us from moving around. I like to. So we've set that now to 1. It's a little bit more fluid, I think. Even if we set it to 1.2. Yeah, that's more of what we want. And then obviously now that we've tested this out, you can make that, well, now we move on to the next series, we can make all these arrows invisible and this line trace, because we don't need to see them anymore. And so you do that, just type in of drawing these traces. Now we have our character moving around just like we wanted to. And I think without the arrows to show you exactly what's happening, it also adds a little bit more to it. But yep, with that, we can now move on to the next series. Just wanted to quickly do this bug report, because when I found them, I didn't want to leave them in there for you. And we'll see you soon.